Hello, beautiful perception trainers community, and welcome back to another Ask Aliyah Anything video. Before we get started, just a reminder, we have lots of resources for you. I have lots of resources for you aside from these videos. I've got the 33-day body balance program. I've got the Your Body is on Your Side program. I've got your perception diet. I've got the transformation series. I've got the emotional mastery series. There's new posts every Monday on perceptiontrainers.com and the mystery school. So if you're liking this work and you want to go deeper, just know that there are a lot of resources there for you, and especially sort of what we're talking about today. Okay, so in our video where we were asking about shadow desires, which I will put the link to below if you have not watched that video already, the question was like, how do we know when our desires are shadow desires or not shadow desires? And I was saying that technically speaking, all of your desires are desires that need to be honored because they are the next step on your journey of creation. And then in that video, I essentially mentioned that because we are each a singularity, yes, you have never been expressed. So you, which is an aspect of consciousness, all that is, you are an aspect of that. That's what your ego is, right? It's simply the aspect of consciousness that you represent, the individual fractal of all that is that you represent, having an individual unique experience within the greater reality. Yes? So small God, relative you, interacting with greater God, ultimate you, if you want to think of it that way. So you interacting with you, small version of reality interacting with large version of reality. And this is a singularity because it's never happened in all of history and all of the future exactly the way that it's happening for you, with you, right here, right now. So because you are a singularity, yes, this means that you are creating something new within the reality. So you being an individual who is having an individual unique experience are expanding consciousness. Now, people will say, well, how is that possible? Because again, if we look at how life works, if we just observe the patterns of life, everything that is not evolving, growing, changing, becoming more complex, evolving, learning, growing, changing, that is all that is, taking its structure, making it more, is then declining. There really is no state of stagnation in life because we're really either growing or we're dying. So we can see with that as we look out and see that the universe itself is continuing to expand, how are we seeing that? We can see that it's everything that is evolving itself. Okay, the universe is building upon itself what it already is. So we're not creating something from nothing. Everything is being created on the foundations of whatever we already had. Yes, a tadpole becomes a frog. It doesn't become a completely different thing, and frogs are not just born out of the air. It is evolved. Okay, that's what evolution looks like. It's taking something that's simpler, yes, it learns something new. That's what a frog does. It learns new things. It learns how to go from breathing underwater to breathing air. And as it goes through that metamorphosis, right, as it goes through that acquisition of new information, it becomes more complex and then evolves into something greater, something new. So this is kind of how we have to look at all of life. This is how consciousness itself is growing, learning, evolving, changing, and expanding through individuals having individual relative singularity experiences. So the reality expressing itself in a way that it never has before, which is what you are, interacting with the greater reality, which is all of consciousness, in a way that's never been interacted before. Therefore, all of this new information is being generated simply by us existing as individuals. And this is what is expanding consciousness, right? So as we as individuals have our individual perspective of the reality, we are all that is, yes, because we are still connected to all that is, and we're going to get into that later. We are all that is looking at itself. We are reality looking at itself in a way that we've never looked at it before. Because we're having our individual singularity experience, we are the individual, a fractal of God, looking out at itself, out at the larger reality in a way that it's never seen itself before. Yes, we are an individual singularity vantage point. So therefore, the reality is learning something about itself simply through us interacting with it. Now, with our desires, with what we wish as individuals to create, that is our evolution of the reality. So we can help the reality learn something about itself simply by being. Even if we have no desires, even if we do the same shit over and over and over again for the rest of our lives, never become anything greater than what we were when we were born, say. Or, you know, we stagnate at some point in life and never really evolve past that. We are still, because we're continuing to have different experiences, relatively different experiences, little bit different every single time. Even if you eat the same breakfast at the same time every single day, because it's a new day, because of the experience of time, it's a new experience. You're seeing the reality in a slightly different way than you did before. So even with just that, you're adding to consciousness awareness of itself through being an individual and interacting. Now, when we have desire, this is what we are doing. This is where we are taking reality and desiring to evolve it. That's what a desire is. It's you wanting to become more complex than you were before. That is what every single desire really boils down to. Every desire you have is you seeing yourself as a more complex version than what you are right now and working towards becoming that. So whatever it is in the physical reality that you want more money, you want more success, you want more fame, you want more health, you want more, that's really the impetus of your internal system, you being God, driving you to go interact with the reality in a way that you never would if you didn't have a desire. In order to learn something about yourself, learn something about the reality, that when you put those two pieces of information together, you can then become something new, right? The you that has more money and can actually have more money is a more complex version of yourself. Now, and so the you that is healthier is a more complex version of yourself. Not complicated, right? We're not adding a whole bunch of shit that doesn't need to be there. And a lot of the time, when we become more complex, we actually simplify, as paradoxical as that might sound. We get rid of all the stuff, not necessarily get rid of it, because I don't like that word. We see all the little fragmented pieces of truth that we've been trying to kind of work with, and we put them together. And it becomes a complex picture that allows us to do something more complex in a simpler way than we've ever done it before. Health, when you really get onto it, is quite simple in the sense that, no, it's easy. It gets to the way where the complexity of it is something you can understand, and then you can work with it, and it becomes second nature. That is really what it is when you become someone who is healthy. Now, the complexity is simply the structure of reality that actually exists. So for most of us, when we're suffering and we're not getting our desires and we're not getting our needs met, what this really means is that we don't know how reality functions well enough in order to get our desires met. And that is why we go after our desire, because it is getting us to learn about the structure of reality, how it actually is, so that we can then act in alignment with it and then evolve it past that. So, right, in order to evolve something, we first have to learn about how it actually works. If we want to make a machine better, we have to know how the machine functions right now. So, all of this is to say that every single one of your desires is there to help evolve you through forcing you to go and interact with the reality in a way that you wouldn't if you didn't have that desire, which will teach you more about yourself, more about the structure of reality, and then you can build upon it. Your desire will be something that has never happened before. Whatever it is that you want to do, you as the individual fractal of God have never expressed and created what you want to create within the relative reality and within the universal reality. It's never happened before. So that is a new thing. That is an expansion upon what is. You becoming more complex. Every single time you evolve, you have created something new within the reality that didn't exist before. You have evolved consciousness, okay? So us just living and observing and having an experience, even if we're breaking ourselves against reality over and over again and never learning from it, still expands consciousness, still gives consciousness new information about itself, because you are a unique vantage point looking out at reality itself in a way that it's never been seen before. When you have a desire and you are evolving yourself, you are expanding consciousness, because you are consciousness. You are God. You are a piece of it. So every single time you evolve yourself, you have evolved consciousness. There is no separation. Okay, so with that, I said, our desires are leading us towards our potential. But even God, even the overarching consciousness, the greater consciousness, that which we would call God, consciousness, whatever it is that we think we're tapping into when we're tapping into higher wisdom, doesn't know exactly how you're going to get there. The plan is not perfectly laid out as though it's already happened. Consciousness knows exactly how it's going to happen because it's never happened before. The universe doesn't even know how you're going to get to your potential exactly because it's a singularity. It's never happened before. If it knew exactly how you were going to get from where you are to where you're going to go, there would be no point in you doing it, because that would generate no new information. And this, bringing it back, what we observe about reality is that which is living is having a new experience, therefore generating new information. That which is not having a new experience is not generating new information, and it dies. So the one thing that is integral for life is new information. Evolution. Yes? So if your potential was already perfectly laid out, the universe was already aware of everything that was going to happen between where you are and where you're going to go, there would be no new information there, and that would be death. You couldn't do it. So there has to be an element of unknown in order for this to work, in order for this to be a part of life. So this gets us to our question. I know I've already been talking for like 13 minutes, but that's the foundation. Yes? And the question I got was, okay, hey there, awesome content as always, but there is one disturbing premise here to me. If the universe, Father, Mother, God doesn't know how things are going to ultimately pan out, or the fullest potential, that must mean it is all up to my finite human mind to figure it all out, question mark, exclamation mark, yikes. Where does praying for guidance come in, or surrender to the ultimate plan? It has come down to me connecting with my higher self in spirit and asking for direction. I am fresh out of ideas as to what to do next, but yet know there is something way bigger I need to be doing. I don't know my next move as of yet, and now without the superpower in the sky to help guide and direct me, it seems like I'm screwed. I feel so defeated. I have analyzed all the logical options so as to what to do, where to go, how to become my fullest potential, and still nothing. I was sure hoping there was a way to tap into the field of pure potentiality for some of the collective wisdom, but if they don't even know, ugh, now what? Thanks in advance for any insight. Okay. Right? This is the perfect question, and I'm so glad you asked this. Thank you for this question, because I understand that when you hear God doesn't even know how it's going to work out, it's not already all planned out, most of us flip out, right? Most of us take that to believe then I have to figure it all out if God doesn't know. And I've been trying that. I've been trying to figure it all out, and look, I'm still not there. I feel completely lost. I don't know what I'm doing. If there isn't a God in the sky who has all the answers that I can tap into, I'm screwed, just as this question said. Now, what I want you to understand is that it's not quite like this, okay? It's not black and white. It's not either God knows everything and therefore it's possible because I don't, or God doesn't know everything and therefore it's completely impossible because I don't know either. It's neither of those two options, right? So whenever we think a thought that feels terrible, right? God doesn't know and therefore I'm fucked. We have to know that, okay, that's a false understanding. That's a false or limiting belief. Anything that feels terrible is telling us that we're on to something that isn't reality. Okay, So if that's you and you're feeling like that teaching that God doesn't know everything feels terrible, you need to check in with yourself and recognize, okay, good, that's my emotional guidance system telling me that I am believing something that is not true. Now, it's not always, okay, and here's the other thing. When most of us are doing our questioning work and we're believing something that feels terrible, we always just want to jump to the opposite, right? Well, if this isn't true because it feels terrible, then the opposite must be true. No, it's always more complex than that, all right? It's not just if what I'm believing isn't true, then the opposite is true. Because a lot of the time, you're going to do that, right? Look in the mirror or look at your bank statement. I have no money. That feels terrible to think I have no money, or I'm in debt, so I must have $1 million. Well, of course that's not true, okay? There's a much more complex thing going on there, right? The false belief is obviously things like I can't make money, and there's nothing I can do about this, and I'm a victim to this circumstance, and there's nothing I can do to get out of this, and this means terrible things about me. And those are all the false beliefs, right? So the real truth is, okay, I got myself in this situation. I don't even understand how I got myself into this situation. And now there's going to be this journey that I have to take to become a more complex human being who can handle money in a way that I don't go into debt. And that is going to be the journey, right? So there's going to be lots of false beliefs in there about yourself and about money and about life that you're going to discover on your path. It's not just one thing. Just deny the reality I'm looking at, okay? So that's the first thing. Now, the next thing is this. I want you to think of you reaching your potential and the universal and the relative perspective like this, okay? The universal perspective, okay, no, put it first this way. Pretend you want to get from New York to LA. So New York is on the East Coast of the United States. LA is on the West Coast of the United States. In order to get from the East Coast to the West Coast, you have to travel west. Now, if no one has ever taken this journey before, okay, let's pretend that this is a singularity experience, which is what all of your desires are. Higher guidance, okay, higher wisdom, God, whatever you want to call it, has the vantage point of looking down and seeing that there's a landmass in between the east and the west. It has the higher guidance of seeing, okay, that is possible because I can see the whole large picture. I can see that there's landmass in between. I can see that going from here to there is possible. I can see that. That is what higher guidance knows. It can see that there is a path from where you are to where you want to go. Your potential is possible. That is what higher guidance has. That is what higher guidance knows. You, being the relative viewpoint, okay, the individual viewpoint, the view on the ground, can see each step of the path in front of you. You can see, okay, I'm standing in New York. Do I want to head, and then looking out from my vantage point in New York, I could head north, I could head east, I could head south, I could head west. I have all these options of ways that I could go. And my desire is to get to LA. I've never been to LA. Okay, so I tune into my guidance system, and we're going to talk more about this as we go along in the video, and say, okay, I'm going to take a step north, right? Because I see that that's a potential that I could take here standing in New York. Higher guidance is going to say, that doesn't work, right? In order to be heading in the general direction of LA, you have to head west. So if you head north, doesn't matter how far you head north, and eventually you'll loop back around to south and then you come right back, you're never going to get to LA that way. You're going to have a negative feeling. Guidance is going to say, no, don't do that. That's the wrong direction. Okay, so then you say, okay, how about if I head west? What if I take a step, right? Because I'm seeing here on the ground, all I can really see is that I can take a step west, I can take a step north, I can take a step east, or I can take a step south. I don't see the whole journey. I don't see the whole picture. I'm here on the ground. All I can see is my next step. So I'm going to take a step west. Ultimate guidance from up above looks down and can see, yep, that's right. That's heading in the right direction. Heading west is good. So that's going to feel good to you. And that's how we do that. Then, so you take your step west, and then you're going to come up against a boulder, say, or you're going to come against something on your path that's blocking you. And you're going to feel like, shit, what the fuck do I do, right? And again, guidance is going to say, keep heading west. Just keep heading west. You being here on the ground, you're the one that has to figure out how to get over the boulder, okay? And again, higher guidance can say, yeah, no, you can definitely get around that. I can see that there's a path around the boulder. I can see you can get over the boulder. That's what higher guidance is set to do, okay? Higher guidance sees the ultimate plan, the whole big picture, the overarching thing. It doesn't know all the details. That is why you have logic. That is why you have reasoning, okay? And so what we really want to look at here is this. In order to reach our potential, we need to be able to combine putting higher wisdom in its place and putting our logic and reason and relative wisdom in its place so that these two things can work together to move us in the direction of where we want to go. Okay, so think of it like this again. Ultimate wisdom sees the whole picture. Your logic is not meant to figure out how the whole picture is going to play out. That is not the role of logic. That is the role of higher guidance. That is ultimate perspective. Ultimate perspective that you tune into when you pray, but not really even that. I'm going to tell you that in a second. When you are tuning into ultimate guidance, you are tuning into the whole picture. Then it is your relative self that is meant to use your logic and reason and skill to navigate each step of the path. Okay? So at no point are you going to know the entire path and what it's going to look like. Okay? The little details of the path are going to present themselves to you as you walk the path. That's the only way you're ever going to know what you need to do next, because it's just right in front of you. Ultimate guidance lets you know if you're headed in the general correct direction or a direction away from your desire. That is what this is. So ultimate potential, ultimate wisdom knows that your potential is possible. It can see that there is a path from where you're starting to where you want to go. It's not on the ground. It doesn't see every individual bit. That is what your logic is for. Your logic is meant to be the thing that figures out how to get over each and every challenge that you face here on Earth. Okay? Not all of it at once, just the challenge you're facing. Okay, now, how do we figure out how to get over the challenges that we're facing? This is where we say, okay, our power lies in our sensory perception machine. Our 5 senses, our emotional guidance system, and our intellect. These are the tools we have to understand the reality we're interacting with so that we can get our desires. Because here's the bottom line. The better you understand how the structure functions, the better you can create what you want to create within it. So you're walking your path from New York to LA, you hit that boulder, you don't understand how to climb, you don't understand how to walk around something, you don't have the patience or the willingness to try several different ways of getting around the boulder and using your logic to figure it out, you will never get there. That's not higher guidance fault. Yes, that's where your logic is supposed to come into play. That is where you interacting with the reality that exists, right? Ultimate consciousness is saying the rock is not, even if it's a mountain, whatever, the higher reality can say, no, it's possible. It's possible to get over that. I can see that there is a path. It might be a very challenging path. It might be difficult, but it's a path. It's there. You can do it. And this is what we really have to start to understand, is that we are here, again, more or less, to be the reality looking at the reality. Ultimate guidance wants you to take that path because, again, Ultimate reality can only see it from up above. It doesn't see every little individual aspect of the path. So you walking the path is how universal consciousness, how all of consciousness is seeing itself in this minute detail. You are the one who's on the ground, mapping this out. So it's not just an up above vision. Because the up above vision can't see the rock, can't see all these little individual details, and can't learn about itself through not interacting with itself. You are discovering the universe and what it looks like and how it works and the structure through walking your path. So that's why I'm saying ultimate guidance wants you to take the path. It wants you to climb it. It wants you to face every challenge and overcome it, but not overcome it, because really what you're doing is understanding it. That's what you're doing. Every time you overcome a challenge, what you really mean is you have understood an aspect of reality, an aspect of the structure and the nature of reality in a way that it's never been understood before, and you've used that information to help you move towards your desire. That's what it really means to learn. You have seen the boulder and you learned how to climb over the boulder. You learned how to climb around the boulder. Both options are correct. It's your logic that gets to figure out what you want to do. What's the easiest path? What's the path I prefer? But you can't do it wrong. That's where you can't get it wrong. So long as you're learning in some way to navigate a boulder, to learn how to climb or to learn how to walk around it, you learned. You saw the reality in a way that it's never been seen before. Maybe someone will come behind you and do the opposite thing that you did, right? If you choose to go around it, maybe someone comes behind you and goes over the boulder, right? So we have lots of people who have similar desires, but you're a different fragment of God with different unique desires and different unique preferences and all of these things that make you unique, that cause you to take a certain path that only you are going to take. So then when someone else comes behind you who also wants to go from New York to LA, climbs over the boulder because they're more determined, more predetermined to be a climber, and you're more predetermined to be someone who goes up around. You see what I'm saying here? So really, we got to understand, we really just need to say that the real thing that we want when we're on our path is to utilize the tools we have, which are our sensory perception tools. Our 5 senses, our gut feelings, which is what we call our intuition, our logic, our reason, our emotions. All of these things are the center point of ultimate consciousness interacting with the individual consciousness. That's how we take this information and put it together, right? So like I always say, the logic is what's on the ground. The logic is simply there to figure out, how do I take the next step? The logic is there to figure out, what do I do next? It is not designed to figure out the whole picture. So every time we don't access higher consciousness and we put the logic in charge of the whole picture, we feel fucked, because the logic can't do that. The logic can only figure out when higher guidance says, okay, which one feels good? North, east, south, west. West. Okay, higher guidance has the whole picture. That's why it feels good. Logic's job to figure out how to move west. Gets rid of all these other options and just, what do I need to do to move west? That's it. That's all the logic has to do, right? Higher guidance says, keep going straight. Logic, or relative person on the ground says, okay, well, there's a boulder. Now it's logic's job to figure out, how do I get around the boulder? That's it. You don't have to figure out what's going to be behind the boulder, what's going to happen after the boulder, but just do the boulder. Just use your logic for the boulder, right? So that is what your logic is. And then again, your emotions, that emotional guidance system, is what's tuning you in to higher wisdom. The higher perspective speaks to you through emotion. It feels good, it feels bad, it feels good, it feels bad. Anything that doesn't feel good needs to be questioned. Again, not necessarily because the opposite is true. It's going to be more complex than that. Yes? Everything that is out of alignment with ultimately the truth of your path is going to feel terrible, because that's overarching perspective saying, no, that's not the structure. That's not how it works. You're not going to get there that way. You can head north all you want. You're never going to get to LA. You see? And then logic says, okay, this feels bad. Why? What am I seeing about the reality that isn't true? Well, I'm telling myself I can't get around this rock. I don't know how to get around this rock. Well, that's technically true. I don't right now know how to get around the rock. But if guidance is telling me I can keep going, then that means I can, right? And the thing that actually feels bad about this is me telling myself I don't know how to get around the rock, so I can't get around it. The truth is, no, it's my job to figure out how to get around the rock. And I don't have to make it this big thing of figuring out my entire life, all right? And then again, it is these body sensations. It is the body. This how we feel in our body, because where are the emotions? Where do we think thoughts? Where does all this happen? It happens inside the structure of this body, okay? So we have to understand this is the miracle of the human body, is that it unites all of this. It makes this entire process possible, because where do we feel our emotions? In our bodies, like I just said. Where do we feel? Where is our intellect housed? It's in our body, right? And the intellect and all these things are driving our physical bodies, and it's via being in a physical body that we can have a physical experience, so we can actually figure out how reality actually works. So it's learning to use these tools. That is really the major thing that we as human beings are learning right now. As we learn emotional mastery, why are my emotions telling me this? What are my emotions telling me? What is the higher, far more complex guidance that I don't understand now, that this ultimate perspective is communicating to me through my emotions? What am I believing about the structure and nature of reality that is not true? What am I believing about the structure and nature of myself that is not true? Because guidance can see the overall thing. It can see you're headed in the right direction or you're not. Now, with my logic, how do I navigate just the next step? How do I figure out what's in front of me? Whatever challenge I'm facing, this is the next challenge. This is the next thing on my path. I'm on my path all the time. We got to understand that. Even if you head north, when guidance told you to head west, you're still on your path, because now you're going to figure something out. You're going to learn, okay, well, every time I go against my feeling, even though it seems so logical to me to head north, it seemed just as easy as heading west or east or south or, west or east or south. My logic told me to go that way. Well, logic didn't know. Logic didn't know. Only my emotions knew that, because that was my guidance. So now I learned, okay, so when it feels like this to make this choice, that's the wrong choice. And again, we don't need to even think of it as wrong. We can just think of it as that's not the direction that's going to get me the direction of where I want to go. So, and again, the other big thing that we have to understand with this is that there is a structure to reality. It's not just if I believe that if I head north enough, that it's, and I believe that it's correct, I will end up in LA. And it's just my false belief or my negative belief that north isn't the right direction that's stopping me from getting there. No, there's a structure. Whatever you want to create, you're gonna have to create within the structure that exists. You can't just make it up. It's not just however you want it to be. There is a nature, there is a structure. Because if there wasn't, if there was no structure to reality, there was no system at all, there was no way in which things work, you couldn't create anything. You cannot create something with nothing. Okay? We have to think of life like Play-Doh. It's very malleable, but it has a structure. It's not water. It's not nothing. Okay? If there was no structure to Play-Doh, if it had no boundaries and no ways in which that it couldn't work, right? Like Play-Doh can't just stretch forever. It's going to break at some point. It has structure. It has rules. It has laws. That is what makes it moldable. If there were no structure, if there were no rules, if there were no laws, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't create anything. So we have to be okay with the fact that reality has a structure, There is a way in which you're going to get to where you want to go. Generally speaking, you have to go west. You can't get there going north. You can't get there going south. Maybe you can get there going east, but that's going to be the hard way. Okay? And then again, so it's like there are two options that will get you where you want to go, and you can choose which ones you want to do. Do you want to do the hard way or the easy way? And then you get to a boulder. There's several ways you can get around the boulder. But to not go over the boulder means you won't get there. So we don't want to think of it as right and wrong, and we don't want to think that there's only one way to do things. There's many ways to do the thing, but there's also many ways not to. And that's what higher guidance is about. Okay? So to sum this up, higher guidance sees the whole overarching perspective. It wants you on the ground to figure out the individual parts, the little minute details of the path. It doesn't see that because it's not on the ground. That's why you're here. That's the point of your individual perspective. You're seeing the reality in a way that it's never been seen before. That's how you're benefiting ultimate consciousness, simply by being alive and going on a journey. Now, your desires, that's your potential. That's what you came here to ultimately expand into, to take the reality that already exists and expand upon it through you becoming something that's never been before from your individual desires. The path where you use logic is everything that comes in my path is something for me to figure out. I can't necessarily there are many ways in which I can do what I'm going to do. Higher guidance tells me to keep going. There's a rock. I get to decide, do I want to climb over it and learn that skill? It's going to be hard because I've never done it before, but I can do it because it's just one step in front of the other. If I don't let my logic mean I have to figure the whole thing out, it's just, okay, what about this, just this next step? How do I take my foot from the ground to the first little bit on the rock, right? And we try many, many different ways to climb it. Maybe you decide, okay, fuck it, I don't want to climb it. I'm going to go around. And then you go around, and both are right. Both ways, you're going to figure something out about the universe, about the reality that you've never known before. And then as you go on your path, the next time you face a rock, it's easier because you figured out how to do that. Yeah, so the path does get easier and easier and easier as you learn these skills through doing it. So that's the point of your logic. And the body, and tuning into the body, tuning into the emotions, tuning into the logic, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, that's your connection point. So we want to use our tools of perception. We want to learn how our emotions work. We want to learn how our logic works. We want to learn how the reality works. That's what we're here to do. So everything has to be, what am I learning from this? What am I learning from this? What am I learning from this? I tune into my emotional guidance system. Yep, I'm headed in the right direction. I'm scared, I don't know, I don't understand. That's okay. I just have to figure out the next step, not the whole thing. That's what my logic is for. And I use my emotions over and over again. Is this the right direction? Yep, okay. Try again, fail, okay, try something new, fail, okay, try something new, fail, okay, try something new. Wait, put all that information from all those failures together. I understand. Now I know how to climb. That's what this is. Okay, so if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. I know I got really pumped up about this, but yeah, it's like we're meant to use every part of ourselves. We just have to put every part in its place. Higher wisdom is still there. It's telling you if you're heading in the general right direction. Logic on the ground, this vantage point that only you have being here specifically as an individual is you. You get to figure out what you want to do with where you're going. But face your challenges and assume you can get over them. And then you will. All right? See you later.